Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Jawad, and today we need to talk seriously about something that affects millions of people but is rarely addressed with honesty or depth. You've tried the diets, you've spent hours at the gym, you've skipped the meals, downloaded apps, counted macros, avoided carbs like poison, and yet the scale hasn't budged, or worse, it's gone up. If that's you, don't blame yourself. You're not lazy. You're not weak. But you might be missing the number one reason why most people fail to lose weight. So today, I'm not just going to give you motivation. I'm going to give you medical truth, science backed insight, and most importantly, a plan. When most people fail to lose weight, the first place they point the finger is at their willpower. They assume they're not disciplined enough, not motivated enough, or just not trying hard enough. As a physician who has worked with hundreds of patients struggling to lose weight, I can tell you with absolute confidence willpower is rarely the problem. In fact, placing all the blame on willpower is not only scientifically inaccurate, it's emotionally damaging and counterproductive. The truth is, weight regulation is primarily driven by biological systems, not conscious effort. Your body is not a simple math equation of calories in, calories out. It's a finely tuned network of hormones and signals that regulate appetite, energy storage, fat burning, and even your cravings. And when those systems are disrupted, as they often are in our modern world, your ability to lose weight becomes impaired, regardless of how hard you try. Let's talk about insulin first. Insulin is a hormone released by your pancreas in response to food, especially carbohydrates. Its job is to help your cells absorb glucose from your bloodstream. But when you're constantly eating processed foods, snacking frequently, or dealing with high stress levels, your body can become insulin resistant. That means insulin levels stay elevated, even when they shouldn't, and high insulin levels signal your body to store fat rather than burn it. In other words, your body is being told to hold on to weight no matter how much you cut calories. Then there's cortisol, the stress hormone. Cortisol is critical for survival in short bursts, but when you're chronically stressed due to work, lack of sleep, emotional strain, or even aggressive dieting, cortisol remains elevated. High cortisol increases your blood sugar, stimulates hunger, especially for sugary and fatty foods, and promotes fat storage around the midsection. So, when you're juggling life stressors and trying to diet harder, your body may actually be protecting fat stores in response to what it perceives as a threat. Let's not forget ghrelin and leptin, your hunger and fullness hormones. Ghrelin tells you when you're hungry, leptin tells you when you're full. In people who are overweight or have been yo yo dieting, these hormones often become dysregulated. Ghrelin levels may remain elevated, keeping you in a state of constant hunger, while leptin sensitivity decreases, meaning your brain never gets the message that you're satisfied. That's not a lack of self control, it's your brain not receiving the right signals. Now, consider thyroid function. Hyperthyroidism, even in its subclinical form, can drastically slow your metabolism, reduce your energy levels, and make weight loss feel impossible. Yet, this is often overlooked in routine evaluations, and many patients are told to just try harder when the real issue lies in their hormonal environment. All of this creates a frustrating and deeply discouraging scenario. People restrict food, increase exercise, and still don't see results, then they blame themselves. But the failure isn't moral or mental, it's metabolic. So when someone says, I'm doing everything right and I still can't lose weight, we need to listen, we need to investigate deeper than calories, we need to look at labs, stress levels, sleep quality, eating patterns, and emotional health. Because once we treat the underlying biological dysfunction, weight loss becomes not only possible, it becomes sustainable. In the end, willpower is a fragile and short term fuel. It can help you start, but it will never carry you through a broken system. If your body is fighting to keep the weight on, no amount of effort will override that until you start working with your biology, not against it. That's not weakness, that's medicine. And it's time we start treating it that way. One of the most common pieces of advice people hear when trying to lose weight is this: just eat less and move more. On the surface, it sounds logical. After all, weight loss is about burning more calories than you consume, right? As a doctor who has treated countless individuals struggling with obesity and metabolic disorders, I can tell you this simple formula is deeply misleading. And in many cases, it's not only ineffective but also harmful. The calories in, calories out model assumes that the human body functions like a calculator. It treats weight loss as a basic mathematical equation. But the human body is not a machine, it's a highly adaptive biological system governed by intricate hormonal, neurological, and metabolic signals. When you reduce a complex physiological issue to a simplistic behavior based solution, you miss the real reasons people fail to lose weight, and worse, you set them up for guilt, shame, and chronic failure. Let's begin by examining the idea of eating less. When someone drastically cuts their caloric intake, especially without professional guidance, their body doesn't respond by simply burning fat. Instead, it activates a series of survival mechanisms. Your metabolism slows down, the body becomes more efficient at conserving energy. Muscle mass may be broken down for fuel, and hunger hormones like ghrelin rise significantly, driving intense cravings and binge eating behavior. This is not weakness, it's evolutionary biology, designed to protect you from starvation. At the same time, leptin, a hormone that signals fullness, begins to decline. So you eat less but feel hungrier. You may even start obsessing over food, thinking about your next meal constantly. That's not poor discipline, that's your brain's response to a perceived energy shortage. The longer this pattern continues, the more your metabolism adapts to the lower intake. This is often why people lose a few pounds initially, then hit a plateau and eventually regain the weight, sometimes more than they lost. Now consider the second half of the phrase move more. While physical activity is crucial for health, it is not the primary driver of fat loss. In fact, studies show that exercise alone produces only modest weight loss for most people. What's more, increasing exercise without adequate nutrition and recovery can elevate cortisol, your stress hormone, which promotes fat retention, especially around the abdomen. When patients overtrain and underdiet, they are often shocked to see no progress or even weight gain. Again, this isn't failure, it's physiology. Another issue with this oversimplified advice is that it ignores context. It doesn't account for emotional eating, food addiction, trauma, hormonal imbalances, thyroid dysfunction, sleep disorders, or polycystic ovary syndrome, PCOS. It doesn't consider socioeconomic factors like food access, education, and time constraints. And it completely neglects the role of psychological health, which is often the foundation of long term success. Real sustainable weight loss requires a multifaceted, individualized approach. It involves not just how much you eat, but what you eat, why you eat, and how your body responds to that food. It requires assessing inflammation, gut health, insulin sensitivity, and stress levels. It demands that we look beyond calories and into the quality of food, patterns of behavior, and internal healing. Let me be clear: caloric balance matters, but it is the end result of a series of internal processes, not the starting point. If your hormones, nervous system, and metabolism are not aligned, forcing yourself to eat less and move more is like trying to drive with the emergency brake on. You may go somewhere, but you'll damage the system in the process. So, next time someone tells you that weight loss is simply a matter of discipline and math, remember this: biology is not that simple. The answer isn't always in doing more, it's in doing it smarter. And it starts with understanding the body, not shaming it. When people struggle to lose weight, their first instinct is often to dive into the most aggressive plan they can find. They slash calories, join high intensity workout programs, eliminate entire food groups, and expect fast results. But what many don't realize is that without a solid physiological foundation, these efforts often fail or worse, backfire. As a physician, I frequently see patients who are doing all the right things but are unknowingly working against a body that is not ready to cooperate. That's why I always tell my patients, before you focus on fat loss, you need to fix your foundation. Let's start with sleep, perhaps the most overlooked and underestimated pillar of health. Research shows that even just one night of poor sleep can disrupt your insulin sensitivity, increase hunger hormones like ghrelin, decrease leptin, and elevate cortisol levels. When this becomes a chronic pattern, sleeping less than 6 minus 7 hours per night, your metabolism takes a serious hit. Fat loss becomes significantly harder, cravings intensify, and your ability to regulate blood sugar declines. In short, your body enters a state where it's primed for fat storage, not fat burning. Trying to diet or exercise your way out of poor sleep is like trying to run a marathon on a sprained ankle. You're pushing through damage instead of preventing it. Next is hydration. It may seem basic, but most people walk around in a state of low grade dehydration. Water is essential not just for general health, but for optimizing metabolism. Your liver, which plays a major role in fat metabolism, relies on adequate hydration to function properly. Dehydration can impair energy levels, reduce exercise performance, and even mimic feelings of hunger, leading to unnecessary snacking. Moreover, proper hydration supports digestion, detoxification, and the transport of nutrients to your cells. It's a simple habit with profound effects, and yet many people are drinking coffee, energy drinks, or diet sodas instead of water and wondering why they feel fatigued and bloated. Now, consider the role of stress management. Chronic psychological stress activates your body's fight or flight system and keeps cortisol levels elevated. Cortisol in the short term is useful for survival. It raises blood sugar and increases alertness. But when it remains high day after day, it leads to muscle breakdown, increased fat storage, especially around the abdomen, suppressed thyroid function, and insulin resistance. Many of my patients don't realize that the daily grind, commuting, deadlines, family demands, screen overload is keeping them in a state of constant metabolic resistance. Meditation, deep breathing, therapy, walks in nature, these are not luxuries. They're metabolic tools. If you don't manage stress, your body won't let go of fat easily. It's that simple. And then we have food quality. Before anyone counts a single calorie, they need to evaluate the source of their calories. Processed foods filled with seed oils, additives, and artificial sweeteners can create inflammation, disrupt gut health, and interfere with hormonal signaling. On the other hand, whole foods, those that come from the ground, trees, or animals, are rich in micronutrients, fiber, and compounds that support detoxification, satiety, and metabolic repair. Nutrient density must come before caloric restriction. You cannot build a healthy body from unhealthy ingredients. In my clinical experience, people who fail to establish a strong foundation often end up frustrated and stuck in a cycle of short term results and long term setbacks. But those who invest in sleep, hydration, stress reduction, and food quality first build a body that is ready, able, and willing to shed excess weight in a healthy, sustainable way. Think of your body like a house. Before you decorate or remodel, you need to check the plumbing, the electrical, the foundation. Skipping that step leads to cracks, leaks, and eventual collapse. It's no different with health. Weight loss doesn't begin with restriction, it begins with repair. And once that's in place, everything else becomes far easier. One of the most significant yet underestimated obstacles to weight loss is not what people eat, but why they eat. Emotional eating, habit driven snacking, and psychological triggers often have far more power over our decisions than we realize. As a physician, I often find that my patients don't struggle because they lack knowledge. Most know which foods are healthier. The real challenge lies in behavior, particularly those driven by emotions, stress, or unconscious habits. And until we address those mental and emotional patterns, sustained weight loss remains elusive. Let's begin with emotional eating. This is not simply a matter of liking food too much, it's a complex coping mechanism. Many individuals use food to soothe anxiety, numb sadness, celebrate success, or even to relieve boredom. The act of eating, especially high sugar, high fat foods, triggers a dopamine release in the brain, providing short term pleasure or distraction from discomfort. Over time, this creates a neurological feedback loop similar to addiction, where the brain begins to associate emotional relief with eating, regardless of true physical hunger. This is particularly problematic in our modern environment, where hyper palatable ultra processed foods are everywhere. They're engineered to be irresistible, offering a quick emotional hit. Combine that with marketing messages that pair food with reward, love, and comfort. And it's no wonder people reach for snacks in moments of stress. What was once a biologically driven activity, eating for nourishment, has become emotionally charged and environmentally manipulated. Patients often tell me, I don't know why I keep eating when I'm not hungry, and that's precisely the issue. Eating has become disconnected from hunger and satiety cues. This is where mindful eating practices become crucial. Slowing down, paying attention to the body's signals, and recognizing emotional triggers can help rewire these patterns. But it requires conscious effort, and in many cases, therapeutic support. Another factor to consider is habitual eating patterns formed over years, often without any emotional distress involved. For instance, always having dessert after dinner or snacking while watching television, regardless of hunger. These routines become automatic. The brain thrives on efficiency, and once a behavior is repeated enough times, it becomes hardwired. Unfortunately, many of these routines do not align with healthy goals. Breaking them requires awareness, intentional replacement strategies, and consistency. Furthermore, many individuals carry deep seated beliefs and psychological associations with food, often rooted in childhood or past trauma. Food may have been a reward, a source of control in a chaotic environment, or even a rare source of comfort. In these cases, addressing eating behavior isn't just about nutrition, it's about healing the relationship with food. This sometimes means involving therapists or counselors, especially when trauma, anxiety, or disordered eating patterns are present. Sleep deprivation and stress also influence emotional eating, creating a vicious cycle. When you're tired or stressed, your brain craves quick sources of energy, usually sugar and refined carbs. Cortisol and ghrelin levels rise, while leptin drops, further confusing hunger cues. Many people are unknowingly eating to regulate their nervous system, not to feed their bodies. Without addressing these upstream causes, simply trying to resist temptation becomes a losing battle. From a medical perspective, treating emotional or habitual eating is as critical as treating high blood pressure or cholesterol. It's not about shaming behavior, it's about understanding it. When we identify what drives eating in the absence of hunger, we can begin to replace impulsive habits with intentional action. So, if you find yourself eating even when you're full or constantly battling cravings that don't make sense, stop blaming your willpower. Start asking better questions. What am I feeling right now? What am I trying to avoid? What does food represent to me in this moment? Long term weight loss requires far more than a meal plan. It demands emotional awareness, behavioral change, and self compassion. When you learn to nourish not just your body, but your mind, everything changes. This is not just about calories, it's about healing the root causes of why we eat the way we do. Only then can real, lasting transformation begin. One of the most powerful yet overlooked truths in weight loss is this: real, lasting change begins not with punishment, but with self respect. So many people approach weight loss with shame, frustration, or even disgust toward their own bodies. They look in the mirror and criticize. They start extreme diets not because they want to care for themselves, but because they want to fix what they believe is broken. As a physician, I've seen the emotional toll this mindset takes and how it almost always leads to failure. Because when your motivation is rooted in self sabotage, your journey becomes a battle, not a healing process. Let's be clear: there is nothing wrong with wanting to lose weight, wanting to feel better, move better, live longer. These are valid and important goals. But the way you pursue those goals matters immensely. If your approach is driven by guilt or punishment, your body senses it. You skip meals, overexercise, ignore pain signals, and push through exhaustion. Not because it's healthy, but because you believe you deserve to suffer to earn results. That's not discipline, that's self rejection disguised as determination. This kind of mindset triggers a cascade of physiological and psychological responses. Stress hormones rise, sleep worsens, mood declines, and the relationship with food becomes distorted. You start labeling foods as bad or forbidden, which increases the likelihood of binging later. You see workouts as punishment instead of celebration. Eventually, the process becomes unsustainable. You fall off the wagon, feel like a failure, and reinforce the same shame that started the cycle in the first place. Now, contrast that with someone who approaches weight loss from a place of self-respect. They choose to eat nourishing food not to shrink themselves, but to support their body. They exercise not to burn off guilt, but to build strength, mobility, and confidence. They rest when needed, prioritize sleep, and acknowledge that their worth is not defined by a number on the scale. These individuals succeed more consistently and more sustainably because they've created an environment of cooperation, not conflict, between their mind and body. This shift in mindset has tangible effects on physiology. When we care for ourselves, when we reduce stress, eat mindfully, and sleep adequately, we lower cortisol, improve insulin sensitivity, and regulate hunger hormones like leptin and ghrelin. The body no longer feels threatened, so it becomes more willing to release stored fat. In essence, the body responds to safety, not fear. You don't need to beat your body into submission, You need to create conditions where it feels safe to let go of the excess. Another important point here is identity. People often try to change behaviors without changing the beliefs they hold about themselves. They say, I want to lose weight, but deep down they believe, I've always been fat, or I never stick to anything, or I'm just not a healthy person. These internal narratives sabotage progress. You must begin to adopt a new identity. I am someone who takes care of my body. I am learning. I am improving. I am worthy of health. This isn't empty affirmation, it's neurological rewiring. Your brain begins to align with the identity you reinforce. So ask yourself, are your daily health choices rooted in punishment or in partnership with your body? Do you criticize yourself into action or do you coach yourself with compassion? Your body is not the enemy, it's not a project to be fixed, it's your home. And the more you care for it with kindness and respect, the more it will respond with vitality, strength, and balance. Weight loss is not just a physical journey, it's a psychological transformation. And it begins the moment you stop waging war on yourself and start working with yourself. That's the turning point. That's when true change happens. Not when you hate your body into submission, but when you honor it enough to finally take care of it